6 p.m. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Public Safety Committee. I'm your chair, Dan Syme, and I'm joined by Vice Chair, Councilwoman Tammy Hawkins. Today I'm joined by following committee members: Barbara Shanklin. Shanika Parrish-Wright is on video. Got Ken Herndon in chambers. Jonathan Joseph is in chambers. Anthony Piagentini. Betsy Rui. Jenny Mulvey-Woolridge are here. And we also have J.P. Lineker in. And I wanted to make a special recognition to 3 gentlemen that we have here for their Boy Scouts. Vincent, Benny, and Evan Biaggi. Where are you at, Vincent, Benny, and Evan? Thank you for joining us for Public Safety. We also have Dr. Paul McCraney. I'm sorry, Doctor. Clerk, will you please read the virtual meeting language?
This meeting is being held pursuant to KRS 61.826, Council Rule 5A, read in full.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. We have 4 items on the agenda that include 1 discussion item and 3 pieces of legislation. Please note we discuss items number 2 and number 4. Following the special discussion, item number 3 will be held in committee and heard at our next meeting. Today we're joined by Amy Luttrell and Darlene Horton with Goodwill Industries of Kentucky. Also in the audience is Evan Benitez with the Office of Violence Prevention. Amy and Darlene are here to provide us an overview of the Pivot to Peace program. Please state your name and title for the record. You may begin if you come on up.
I'm Amy Luttrell. I'm the president and CEO for Goodwill Kentucky.
I am Darlene Horton. I'm the director of the Pivot to Peace program.
All right, well, good afternoon, everybody, council members, committee members. Ocean, now OVP, approached Goodwill last year to ask us if we would consider more direct involvement in the efforts that were ongoing to address the violence that Louisville has experienced over the last few years. We already were delivering services to adults who had involvement with the criminal justice system and also to young adults, some of whom have had that involvement and some who have not. And we saw a lot of overlap in the people who we served and the people who are involved or might potentially be involved in gun violence. We also had a lot of conversations with one of our sister Goodwills up in South Bend, Indiana, who has run a similar program in that area for a number of years and done that successfully. Also, Rena Sharp, our Chief Operating Officer, has served on the governance committee of GDI for the past few years. Like everybody, we have been concerned, very concerned with the level of violence in Louisville. So we considered that request seriously, and we ultimately decided that we should honor it. I have heard it said that we did not want to do that work. A more accurate statement would be that we didn't ask for it, but that when we were asked, we were happy to help with it because we did believe that we could do a good job with the program. We selected Darlene Horton, who has worked with Goodwill before, to lead the Pivot to Peace program, and Darlene started in that role in late September. And then also Melvin Roberts, who was in a different role with us as the associate director for the program, and Melvin started in late October. So we've been very well pleased at how Darlene and Melvin have handled the program and the progress that we've made in just a few months that the program has been operational. So with that, I'll turn it over to Darlene to give you all a good progress report on Pivot to Peace. Darlene?
So thank you all for having us today. This is an opportunity that we do not take lightly. As you know, we are responsible for advocating for Pivot to Peace, and this is an opportunity for allowing us to show our great work through goodwill. I'm glad you all called us for this opportunity. So Pivot to Peace Network is more than just goodwill. Pivot to Peace Network consists of 4 organizations. That is Goodwill, Volunteers of America, U of L Hospital, and Office of Violence Prevention. For the Goodwill part of this conversation, that's what I will be talking about. So, Pivot to Peace for Goodwill is a community-based violence organization that is designed to reduce gun violence. Our goal is to provide street-level intervention to help with mediation, retaliation, connecting people to resources, and resolving ongoing things that are associated with group or gang activity with the high-risk populations we serve in the 4 locations we're at. Our 4 locations right now, which I hope we get to expand, is Russell, Park Hill, Algonquin, Taylor Berry, and Newburgh. As of now, we have been boots on the ground officially programmatically December 1st, 2024. I know some people have mentioned, hey, you all had this opportunity a bit longer. The first thing we did when we started this initiative was actually staff and recruit. That was around from October to January, staffing and recruiting. In November, we surveyed our neighborhoods and let them know that we are on our way and we are coming. December, we are boots on the ground. That is in Russell, Park Hill, Taylor Berry, Algonquin, and Newburgh. By January, all our teams were fully staffed. So, for the beginning part of this year, 2025, we focused on training and development. Focused on relationship building, daily outreach, street-level intervention, mediation, and resource and connecting. In February, we were proud to have our press release announcing that we have joined the Pivot to Peace Network. And as we go into June, we are focused on community impact, establishing positive relationships and mentoring, neighborhood activations, and Pivot to Peace pulse checks where we come to our neighborhoods and ensure that they understand we're here. When we hear that there have been shootings in their neighborhoods, and we want them to know there are resources and things that we can help with. We are conducting mediation, and we are establishing positive presence with the businesses, the local leaders, parks, community centers, and the community. I can talk about our goals too, if you like.
Thank you. Any committee members have any comments or questions? Okay. Vice Chair Hawkins, please.
Thanks for being here. I want to first go back to Ms. Amy. I want to say that I was the one who stated that you said that you didn't ask for it. Those were my words. And I'm glad that you took it, right? I just today want to know, you all were giving $1 million. A lot of the work that the nonprofits was doing was given to you all. So I just kind of wanted to know, I have a series of questions. One of those questions are, and I'll just go straight into those, what makes a client or a person's team, how do you interact with high-risk clients? And how do you target those high-risk clients?
Great question. So for us, we hire credible messengers. That's important to me, of course. A credible messenger has to be someone that the community can relate to and understand. So we hire people who are from the community, people who have shared experiences that of someone who were high risk, meaning that they might have been group or gang involved at one point in time, meaning that they may have shared time in jail or prison, meaning that the community knows them and they're tied, whether it's their family ties or friendships or things that they were doing in the community. That is the main part of a credible messenger that allows us to be effective. A lot of people have passion to do this work. In order to do this work as well, you have to make sure that the right people are in front of the people who will be able to receive them and be able to listen to them so they can change their norms on gun violence.
Okay, so basically you look at so they put their, police check on a resume? Or, cause when they fill it, so how do you just have a lens for they understand, who the high-risk clients are?
That was actually a part of this, interviewing process that we established that those answers.
Okay, so how many referrals have you guys made to DOA?
As of today, we have made over 400 referrals to be open.
Is it over 400?
Yeah.
Okay, so, from the referrals sent to DOA, how many were high risk and how many was referred to ODP?
So, do you mind letting me go over what qualifies as high risk so that make sure everybody understands? Thank you. So the target population for someone is someone who's high risk is meaning that they have to be group or gang involved, and you have to hit 2 of these criteria, let's just say that. 1, you have to be a member of a gang or group known to be actively involved in violence. 2, these are people who are saying that this means you're a qualifier to become a part of the pivot to peace networking. We're going to start interacting with you in a way of getting you group or gang disengaged. 2, you have to have a history of criminal activity, including criminal crimes against persons. You have to be a leader or core member of a gang or group actively involved in violence. Pending or prior arrest for weapon offenses. Current or past victim of a shooting. Currently under probation, parole, or other new supervision, or recently released from custody. Between the ages of 14 to 35, which we have adjusted because unfortunately 14 is not young enough, and 35 sometimes is not the gap, which is unfortunate. And then we have a priority. Priority is in, this needs to be high consideration if we are engaging with this individual. Individuals are members of a gang or group that is actively involved in a current conflict. Recently shot or related or connected to someone recently shot or killed, known to be a regular carry of a gun, and high probability to participate in retaliatory action.
Okay, I'm sorry, I maybe misunderstood the question. I think everybody here is fully aware of what a gang member is we've been on the gangs for a while now. So we ain't gotta waste no time with that. My next question is, how many interruptions or mediations have you done per site? And how do you ensure your team is doing the work in the area that they're in? I know you said Algonquin, Russell, Park Hill, just besides canvassing the area, and how many from each neighborhood, out of the 400 and something, how many are you getting so we can kind of target what areas? I'm sure that the council would like to know which areas are the worst.
Okay, so thank you for that answer. And some of that I might have to refer to our partners like ODP, talk about referrals and
Okay.
stuff like that.
And if you don't have it, you can always get back with us.
Thank you, I appreciate that. So as of right now, year to date, we have 93 mediations that we have done overall through all 4 sites. Russell is leading at 30, and then Park Hill mediations is at 19, Taylor Berry's 29, and Newburgh has had 15 mediations. With that being said, our mediations are successful based on the credible people who put in the community, the established relationship they're building with the community, that we're not only in the community canvassing every day, but we have established a relationship with the community where business owners and people from the community themselves or people who are already a part of the program as a high-risk participant are referring people and saying, I think this is another person we should reach out to.
Okay, what happens after, you all refer people to VOA?
As Goodwill, we are boots on the ground, so our way of introducing someone to Pivot to Peace Network is talking to them, boots on the ground, engaging with them every day, day-to-day mediations, retaliations. The moment they say they need services, they are referred to Volunteers of America, which someone from Volunteers of America may want to stand up and answer that question.
No, you don't have to. I'm trying to see what Goodwill's doing, because that's who we gave the $1 million to. We gave a separate $1 million to VOA. So all you basically do is just refer clients to VOA, would you say yes? And I know you said something about housing, so you don't have a housing option.
I'm sorry, I didn't know I mentioned housing. When it comes down to the actual component of barrier reduction, case management will be able to want to address those barriers, whether it's housing, employment, opportunities like that. When it comes down to the $1 million, our $1 million, 94% of it, which is almost all of it, is salary. We have 24 people on our team, and only 6% is for office. So that is safety uniforms, so our team is out there identifiable. They work from 1:30 p.m. to 10:30 p.m., so we need to make sure the community knows who they are. And in digital equipment such as phones, laptops, business cards that can help people get in contact with us. That's what our budget consists of.
Okay, so, so the $1 million has been spent on staff, phones, computers, just stuff to identify that you all are there, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so would you say that you all need more money? How many staff do you have?
There's 24 of us. And yes,
24, and so if they're split up, are they split up in different areas?
great question. I'm sorry. I'm
No,
cutting
go
you
ahead.
off. I get a little excited answering these questions.
No, you good.
I'm so excited talking about this. So great question. Yes, I would love more money because we can be effective and we can expand. And no matter how low the numbers are going down, it can be missed opportunities if you're not investing in the areas that's still up there. So at the end of the day, when it comes down to our sites, 20 people are boots on the ground of the 24.
So, not that you're
And each site is 5 people.
okay, so you consider boots on the ground just going out and just canvassing gang members, right? You don't already be able to identify like, who these gang members are or, you know, things like that? I'm just trying to,
Yeah, that is our role. To
okay,
get everyone to pivot to peace, it is our team who has to be able to identify them, to put pipeline them to pivot to peace network.
what if they're not in the areas, the 4 areas that you cover?
I feel like my heart breaks every time someone asks that question because
Is it a question?
as of now, we are in our 4 areas that our grant board has selected for us based on the data that shows this is the most high-risk areas.
Okay, and you get your data from,
From what I understand, we use the OVP dashboard, Metro dashboard that was referenced last week in the budget meeting for our source of data that Ivan is the one who oversees and puts in.
okay, and I think he gets his data from LPD. I'm not quite sure, I know he has a salary with, used to be Ocean to do that one. And for some reason, that data just wasn't, it wasn't to my satisfaction. Do you all do any relocation at all? So if you have a gang member that is active, and, you know, he needs to get out of here, family's not safe, whatever the case may be, how do you, do you look into relocating that family?
So as our role for Goodwill, our set boots on the ground, when we make a referral and we tell we tell our Volunteers of America, and then we're setting it up where we can expedite that to OVP as well, to say that this person needs X, Y, and Z. In those cases, we can inform, but because our part is boots on the ground, we don't want to overstep on the work that our great partners are doing, we're limited to that. We do not have funding outside of,
So basically, all you all do is just refer to other resources, right?
No.
Right, for right now, just right now, this is what we've been able to do.
Sorry, when you say all you do, I'm like, I gotta face the team now.
I mean, yeah, of course, you have a great team. I'm very passionate about this work, right?
Okay,
Because I am boots on the ground,
yeah,
so I can speak to it.
yeah.
So when I say that, I mean, I'm just thinking $1 million, and then, I'm just wondering, like, $1 million, 24 people, and the gang members ain't reducing. So I'm like, what's up? So I'm just trying to see, is it work? I'm not saying that it's not working, I'm just saying you need more money, or, you need a broader range. I'm just kind of looking at it as being a referral source. And if that's what it is, that's what it is.
Can I interject and ask?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you, I appreciate it. So I wanted to say this and I'll answer your question. So just give me a couple minutes and I promise you I will, explain why I say, being a boots on the ground is the most critical role for this position. Because we were boots on the ground, I'm giving you people's names from our group. Juanisha was able to help a girl in her prom meet. Because we were boots on the ground, Thomas helped a young man get his birth certificate, driver's license, and employment. Antonio helped 2 people find housing. Sean helped someone get rehab. David helped clients get their CNA training. Greg helped connect people to anger management. Lamar was able to disengage 2 people from the street. Beverly helped reunite a runaway to his parents. David had clients going to school for their CDL. We had help people with employment. We have helped high-risk people find different options because we are boots on the ground. It is our critical messages along with an amazing partnership that is allowing people to know that we will meet you where you're at and we can bring you to where you need to be. So, it sounds simple, we're on the ground, but every day you're out there in those highest risk areas identified by the data to say, I want to help you save your life and get you on a path that is to your fullest potential and not limit you to having a gun in your hand. So, it's a lot more to that to me when you say that.
Thank you. For the record, council members Shanika Parrish-Wright and Donna Purvis have joined us. And Councilman Ken Herndon.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for being here. Yes, I have a question. I've been working with Rena Sharp about hosting this year's Gun Violence Summit at the Goodwill of Rena Center on Broadway. That's put on by formerly Ocean, now Office of Violence Prevention. Can you tell me what the status of that is?
The only thing that I can tell you about the status is that we have communicated that we're willing to host it if that's what's desired. And we think that it's doable, and we'd be very happy to have it there.
Thank you. I have a meeting with them tomorrow morning. I just want to get the most recent opinion from you guys, and I'll follow up. Thank you so much.
I don't see any more people in the queue. Thank you for your presentation. Clerk, would you please read item number 2 in the introduction, please?
An ordinance amending sections 123.01 through 123.06, sections 123.32, 123.35, 123.37, and 123.99, and creating a new section of chapter 123 of the Louisville Metro Code of Ordinances, LMCO, regarding regulated property and restricted metals, amendment by substitution. Motion.
Second.
The item has been properly moved and seconded. Councilman Kevin Prager is the sponsor of this ordinance. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate you guys allowing me the opportunity. If you look through the whereas statements, there are 6 of them. The long and the short of it is this. We have seen a drastic increase in theft of wire, specifically telecom wire and wire for lighting along our expressways. So there are certain parts of our community where you drive down the expressway and there are no functioning lights. You can see where the street lights exist, but the lights aren't on, and that's because folks are pulling up, opening the aluminum door, hooking to that wire, cutting it from there, driving a little bit, cutting it, and then just literally pulling it out with the truck and taking it in for recycling. It is valuable in as much as there is it is a commodity that has a sale price, along with the fact that this is theft. There are significant safety issues here. They're not only taking wire that allows for lighting, they're also taking telecom wire, which means that they're cutting service for you and I when we want to talk to our friends and family. But more importantly, they're making it impossible for folks to call 911 or get any kind of service when they might need it. At the same time that's true, what we found is that not only are folks cutting these wires to sell them in recycling, because the wires are hanging on poles very near other kinds of wire, they're also cutting fiber optic cable. And when they cut fiber optic, that cuts telecommunications for the internet, for phone, for you name it. It's not uncommon that they will cut the fiber optic, recognize that it's not what they wanted, and literally leave that sitting on the ground right near the pole. It's very expensive. It's also, as I say, a safety issue and quite dangerous. And so the whereas explain why this was necessary, how we ended up in this place. I will say from the up front that I've reached out to both the telecom industry, to KYTC, who is responsible for those lights, LG&E, and then also reached out to the recycling industry. Understandably, if you are in the recycling industry, these additional regulations make it more difficult for you to function. And I think as we move into the conversation, we should not lose track of that, right? We're regulating an industry who's not causing the problem, but because of the way that the sale works, you've got folks who are breaking the law, and then they're taking this material that is stolen goods, and they're selling stolen goods to recyclers. And the recyclers don't want the stolen goods, but they do want the recyclable goods. And so it's a challenge for them, I get it. If there were a different way to do this, we'd have a different conversation. So, and then again, let me make it clear. In all of my conversations with the recycling industry, they understand, right? There's not this sense that you guys are just picking on us. They don't want to buy it either. So we're trying to find a way to add regulations that capture what we need to capture, but that aren't onerous for the recycling industry. I will just share with you, and we'll go through a bit of it, but one of the deepest challenges was, we had a conversation around ferrous and non-ferrous metals, and I wanted to strike some of the language, or I wanted to add in and make certain things exempt. The problem is if I make non-ferrous metals exempt, then anything else I did with wire goes away, right? Because that's non-ferrous. I learned that through this process. The other thing that's challenging, we asked for and sought, tried to find a definition for telecom wire or utility wire or wire in general that would identify what's being stolen so that we could just regulate that. So we came up with the definition for infrastructure wire. The reality is that the same wire that you would use to light the expressway lights is the kind of wiring that a person would use to wire their grandfather's barn. And you can't know the difference when it gets to the recycling entity, right? That there's not a way to say, you can buy this one, you can buy this one without regulation, but you can't buy that one. It looks the same. So unfortunately what that meant is we had to add regulations on wire that we really didn't want to regulate, but the only way to get to the wire we needed to get to was by adding that regulation. I hope that makes some amount of sense. So here's what we did with the ordinance, and I'll happily take questions. One of the things that you're going to see in the ordinance is the Department of Codes and Regulations has changes that has been done consistently throughout the ordinance. We added the definition for electrical wire, highway lighting wire, telecommunications wire, and we lumped those all together and called that infrastructure wiring, and we have a definition for infrastructure wiring. We made that a regulated property so that if an industry were to purchase that, there would be certain stipulations, certain reporting requirements. It doesn't say they can't buy it. It just says that if they buy it, they need to keep track of who they bought it from and things like that to make it where we could find folks who are stealing these things. Scrap ferrous metals are excluded from regulated property, so we recognize there's a difference between metals that have, say, iron in them versus metals that are copper or aluminum that would be primarily wire. So we exempted those ferrous metals. That's in the first section, and then in the second section we added a local licensing, so that recyclers have always had to have a license from the state of Kentucky. Now they have to have a license from Metro Local as well. The advantage there is that if they have a local license and they're running up against, or having problems with something at the local level, then we have the ability to withhold that license or suspend that license, which gives us the ability to engage that recycler more completely. So there is a license. We established a license fee. I was trying to figure out what a fair license fee would be. I looked at what the state is charging for recyclers, and I just used the same fee the state uses. So I would argue it's a minimal fee, it's $75 a year, but we did want to at least get that license in place. Sections 3, 4, and 5 are conforming to 123. They changed codes and regulations, the name again, that was their name change. All regulated property and restricted metals get information on the time and date that it was purchased, description of property, things like that. And then what we did is we added language that for restricted metals, which includes infrastructure wire or burner wire, there are additional bits of information that the recyclers must collect on our behalf. That's photo of the seller at the time, it's a digital copy of the government ID for each transaction, scan the back of the ID, seller's phone number. We want that, we need a license plate number, so that to enter that, a digital photo of the property, and then a digital thumbprint. Those are only for, those special requirements are only for the things that we're trying to regulate, right? That doesn't include if somebody brings in a washer and dryer, it doesn't include if somebody brings in a lawnmower. This is specific to if you're bringing in wire, and we're really looking for burnt wire, we want to know who you are and where you got that, basically. It mirrors the existing state requirements, making it illegal to give false information. So if you are selling this to a recycler, and the recycler is doing all the things they're supposed to be doing, right? They're trying to keep this from purchasing things that they shouldn't be purchasing. If a person gives the recycler false information, that now is a Class A misdemeanor. We raised the level of charge there to give it a little bit more teeth, to say, folks should not be giving false information to recyclers. The no cash transactions is consistent with what you see in other portions. It prohibits the purchase of burned metals without a signed certificate of ownership. So if there's a reason that you actually have burned wire, and you can show that, then you can purchase it. But burned wire means that somebody cut it off of a pole somewhere, they took it someplace and burned the rubber sheathing off. That's not a standard practice for the telecom industry. When the telecom industry decides to recycle wire, they typically do it in the sheathing that was on the wire, and that sheathing identifies who that belonged to. The only reason to burn that off, say that differently, there might be some other reason, some less like that. The primary reason for burning the sheathing off is because you want to make it where you can't tell where the wire came from. That's a problem. We made it mirror Kentucky statute again, and then we, consistent with Kentucky statute, it's a Class B felony, Class B misdemeanor, I'm sorry, if someone purchases according to Section 8 Amendment. Anyway, it's in there. Sellers who provide false information certificates are penalized also as a Class A misdemeanor. And then the last two things, and I was particularly excited, we put language in that says, very much like the dumping ordinance, where if we have you on film dumping, on camera dumping illegally, we can take your car or truck away. We've done the same thing. If a police officer sees you cutting it, if we have video evidence or photographic evidence that shows that your vehicle was used in stealing these types of cable, these types of wire, we can and will impound your car. We also added language, very much like the catalytic converter language, that says that if you have this burnt wire in your possession and you don't have any, proof that there's a reason you would have it, then that just having it in your possession is against the law. The same as having a catalytic converter. And then the other thing, I got some feedback this morning from the industry. There was some concern about it was left to LMPD to determine, and so we added language to make it clear that if there's a violation and a recycler feels like that it was an unfair, that they were charged unfairly, they can take their complaint to the Code Enforcement Board, which is a local board that gives us a much quicker opportunity to respond to their concerns, so it's not like they have to wait for the courts to weigh in. And then if they don't get satisfaction there, then they can take it into the courts. But the goal is to have as minimal impact on the industry as we can, while recognizing and understanding that this is a serious problem, and that we need to put some language in place that makes it easier for us to recognize who it is that's stealing this material and trying to sell it. So that's pretty much the gist of it. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Councilman. In the queue is Shanika Parrish Wright, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, Councilman Kramer, I want to thank you for your work on this. I know it hasn't been easy, and you've been trying to be as inclusive as possible. My concerns are around language. Language does matter, and the language around the definition is very broad. And this isn't, as we know that people have been profiled and people deal with all sorts of issues. As we're trying to deal with one, we don't want to put someone in a bad situation. And I'm really concerned about the infrastructure wire and how it's too broad. Seeing as that there's financial penalties, as you stated, with the statute, the ordinance draft, and someone can get up to 12 months in jail. And we know that a lot of people who are entrepreneurs, a lot of people use recycling facilities to save money, to recycle, to all those things, and we love that people are doing it. But I think we want to be clear in our language and our definition of infrastructure wire. And just specifically that it's so broad, that the ordinance wide, like saying utility wire, can leave it open. And that in fact, as I checked with some of the people that are in the industry, and who agree with a lot of the things you've done and are thankful for it, and they definitely want to handle the burnt wires and all of that in a different way, which I think your ordinance does. The fact is that you can buy the kind of wire that's referred to in this definition at Home Depot, and you can have it delivered to your house tomorrow by Amazon. And because of that, that worries me, and I said this in our last meeting, I'm not just making this up, that really concerns me. How can we figure out the best definition so that people who are well-intentioned, doing the right thing, I'm not talking about the burnt wire folks, the people that they're not caught up in this.
Did you want to respond, sir?
Yes, thank you. Councilman, again, that was in my opening comments, is precisely that. There is not a whole lot of difference between the electrical wire that is in the street lights. And I would point out, speaking to the councilman from District 3, your district is more hard hit with the light problem than other portions of the community, right? The telecom wire is pretty much all over. But the street lights, where we've seen the worst of it has been along 264, specifically 264 west of 65. So we're talking about safety here. We're talking about lighting on streets. The reality is, and you're quite right, there's not a lot of difference between electrical wire that carries enough current to turn those lights on. And so there's not a way to define it. We tried. There's not a way to define it more clearly to say you can't buy material that's stolen and identified as being stolen. It looks exactly the same. And so short of, being able to find a way to say, and again, it's already illegal to buy something that's stolen. So what this does is it doesn't prohibit a scrap dealer from purchasing wire. What it does is it acknowledges that the kind of wire that is used in streetlights and the kind of wire that lights someone's barn is the same kind of wire. More wire is being stolen that lights streetlights than is being stolen that lights barns. So our challenge isn't so much to identify specifically the wire. Our challenge is to figure out who's selling it so we can figure out if that person who's selling it is actually selling something that belongs to them versus something that they've stolen. So this doesn't, and I think folks might misunderstand. I'm not suggesting that you're misunderstanding. I want to make sure John Q. Public understands. Nothing in here prevents a scrap dealer from buying any of these products, right? Well, except burnt wire. Even burnt wire they can purchase as long as the person who's selling it has proof that it belonged to them, right? So what it does though, is it requires them, the scrap metal dealers, to do a better job of keeping track of who they purchased it from, when they purchased it. We want a photo of what they purchased, so we know what we're dealing with. It makes it more possible for us after the fact to go back and figure out where this came from, so we can trace down the people who are stealing it. And again, I remind you, the only reason we're having this conversation is because there are sections of expressway in Louisville that you can't drive on safely after dark because people have stolen the wire. There have been multiple situations where folks had access to telecom that was disconnected or the service was interrupted because people pull up to telephone wire, telephone poles, and just slice it. We've even had situations where, and it happened in my school, went into school one morning, our entire internet was down. I went to the head of our IT department and I said, do you know if this is a problem? Do you know if the fiber optic cable got cut? He said, I called our provider and they said they don't think that's the problem. Later that day, he came to me and he said, I don't know how you knew that. He said, but when they came out to find out what had happened in the fields just across the street from us, someone had cut the fiber optic cable thinking that they were cutting copper wire. And our school, the entire neighborhoods around our school, what used to be GE, that entire area, all of them lost all of their telecom because people are stealing copper. And the reason they're stealing it is because it's easy to sell and it makes a little bit of money. They don't make near off of it what it costs, but it's easy and it's quick. All we're asking the industry to do is help us keep track of it, right? It's not like they can't purchase it, it's just help us find out who's doing it, for safety's sake.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Piagentini.
I wanted an opportunity to readdress, because my question didn't get answered. My question, and I agree, I want this regulated, I want it dealt with. My question is that the broadness of the definition means that someone in possession could be charged with a crime for having this. And so the best solution would be that the wire has insignia on it itself so that it's already in it, but that is another department to deal with that, right? We can't make the manufacturers put everyone that buys it and put their symbols in it that can't be burned off, because to me that would seem to be a better solution. But possession of the kind of wire as described with your definition can be used as they can be charged with a crime as it's evidence to sale. That to me, and I know you said that they can, because of the local ordinance, and they can take it to the codes or regs or whatever they need to do, but that doesn't stop them in the criminal process what if they're wrongly charged. That to me, what I wanna know is, you said that you've tried to find different ways to define this. Are there other examples in other cities or other places where they've dealt with this issue in a way that it speaks to it? Because this is not just me as a concerned person who know people who recycle and do all of that. I'm saying is, even if people in the industry say that the definition is too broad.
Councilwoman, the definition is as broad as it is only because there's not a way to define it more narrowly. A wire is a wire is a wire, and the wire you use to conduct that level of electricity is the type of wire you use to conduct that level of electricity. You can't make it clear, there's no way to define a wire that KYTC uses versus a wire that somebody uses to electrify their barn. It's impossible to do that. So that's why the language is as broad as it is. It seems to me your concern isn't so much about at the recycling facility, right? Like figuring out the wire. It sounds to me like you're concerned about the folks who might be in possession of it, right? The ordinance doesn't make it illegal to be in possession of wire that you have every reason to be in possession of. It mirrors the language around catalytic converters. We knew a couple years ago people were sliding up under cars, they were cutting out catalytic converters, and they were selling them like nobody's business. What we did is we said, there's only certain circumstances where you would have a catalytic converter. And if you've got them in your possession, and this isn't something that you would normally have in your possession, then it's illegal. Now, what this does is it says, if you are John Q. Public, who has pounds and pounds and pounds of this stuff in your possession, and you don't have any reason to have it, except that you just say, hey, I have it, where'd you get it, right? It simply says, you know what our problem is, we've identified, this is where we can, this is a pinch point, if you will. And so we've identified, we've included language in here that lets us treat that wire the same way we treated catalytic converters. And again, the goal there is just to say, there are only certain situations where you would have this in your possession. And one of, perhaps the largest reason, is you stole it from somewhere. There's no reason for somebody to have spools of burnt cable. There's no reason for somebody to have, you know, yards and yards and yards of wire that KYTC uses to light properties. Now, again, if you got a person who is rehabbing a facility, and in the process of rehabbing the facility that got that, then they have everything they need, and it's not illegal for them to have that. So we're not targeting, you know, folks who are doing rehab work. We're not targeting, you know, folks who have a reason to have these materials. We're simply saying, if this is not the industry you're in, and you just all of a sudden have all of this cable, that's problematic. There's not a way more narrowly defined that. Sorry.
We're gonna move right along, we've got a few more minutes.
Can I get back in the
Continue,
queue?
please, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm in support of this. To be clear, it's hard. And the only thing I lament is that in industry, there is many great actors who are all doing the right thing, have now an administrative burden because of other people's legal activity. That sucks. Unfortunately, this isn't the first time in the history of government that that's ever happened. There are about 1 million things that we all do and pay for, and business pays for. The whole fact that licenses even exist in any industry is because of other people being bad actors, and therefore we have to require everybody to be licensed to do certain activities, right? So it is lamentable that we have to put in some regulations, but I think you've threaded the needle here. And I want to point out to my colleague and to all my colleagues and the public, we have experience doing something like this related to catalytic converters, okay? There is no evidence, literally zero evidence, that LMPD or any other law enforcement agency in this city have gone hog wild in writing tickets and arresting people who were legitimately had catalytic converters and you know, were wrongfully accused of that. There's no evidence of that. So this idea that, you know, law enforcement is now going to go out and start arresting people left, right, and sideways because they have, you know, I've got to replace a light switch on my house, and I'm going to have a little bit of wire on me, and they're going to, you know, waste their time, you know, questioning on this facility. Not to mention that person still has due process rights in the courts, which has to be proven. They can't just the accusation itself is not enough, particularly when we're talking misdemeanors. So I think what you're having is good, and I want to underline how serious the problem is related to the highway lighting. I have constituents who regularly text me because they're on the road all the time on whole stretches. It's gotten better, thankfully. KYTC and others have started rewiring these lights. But there were whole periods of time where huge swaths of these streets were pitch black. And these were people commuting in the morning and commuting at night. I myself have daughters who just got their driving permits, and in 6 months will have their restricted licenses. And you know, they work, particularly in the winter time, they're going to be coming home after dark. I want these streets lit. This is I would love to have a solution that did not require additional regulation of good law-abiding businesses. But I think you have done the right work here, and I see very little to no risk that, because we have evidence in other circumstances, that anybody is going to be arrested or burdened because they have excess, because they have wiring that they bought from the store. So thank you for your work on this, and I'm fully supporting it.
Councilman Lanier, please.
Thank you, Chair. I want to commend my colleague for bringing this, because this is a very serious issue, and I do think, you know, that there are, you know, some similarities to what was done with catalytic converters from the council in the past. I do think that there are significant differences, however, and I want to say, I speak from a lot of personal experience here. My first job was a scrapper. My dad was a rollback machinery truck driver, and part of that job is collecting some scrap, including scrap wire. when I was a freshman in high school, I had my Sears and Roebuck coveralls, and I would come out of factories looking like a coal miner with my sister frequently. Scrappers, when you talk about industry, when you talk about dealers, when you talk about developers, all these people that might incidentally deal, or even in long yard dumpsters in scrap metal, you can talk about industry. But when you talk about scrappers, industry is not the right word. These people are as salt of the earth as it gets, frequently don't have a high school education. We are not going to be able to properly communicate this. I do have a problem, and I don't want to have a problem, but I do have a problem with Section 9 and Section 10J when it comes to the possession problem. I have had in my possession spools of this kind of metal with no paper trail of how it came into my possession, because these people are scavengers. These people are trying to survive. They are trying to keep a roof over their families' heads as best they can with very marginal work. They're not criminals. Some people are criminals, and that is just true. But a lot of these people that are bringing trucks in, pickup trucks with this kind of wire into these facilities, even if they're a minority, I don't think having prima facie that this is a crime has been committed with a penalty between criminal and civil up to $2,000 and a year in jail, and they're going to have to go defend themselves in court with the meager means they have in missing this work, and their truck is impounded while the case is adjudicated. I think this is too tall an order. That's my only problem with the legislation. Thank you.
Councilman Brady, you have to respond.
Thank you. I won't respond to it entirely, but the last piece especially I think is interesting. We're talking about impounding the vehicle of a person who is either seen by a police officer or caught on video or with photographic evidence that they are cutting fiber or cable off of poles or pulling it out of lights. We're talking about impounding cars from people who we see breaking the law. These aren't scrappers. These aren't people who are out there doing legitimate work. These aren't folks who are doing remodeling work for somebody. They're cutting cable off of poles. And that's what we take the car for. So please don't misunderstand this. If you're out, again, if you're John Q. Public and you're watching, please don't misunderstand. We're not talking about taking a truck away from a guy who's legitimately involved in the scrap business. We're taking a truck away from a guy who we watched cut a cable off of a pole that clearly doesn't belong to him. That's the first part. And as I respond to that, I think it kind of leads into the rest of my response. If a scrapper is doing remodel work, or if a scrapper is scrapping materials that belong to someone and they've given them permission to do that, those folks aren't in violation of the law. So for all of our worry and concern, we're worried and concerned about the wrong things. It's not against the law to scrap metals. It's not against the law to be involved with a demolition project where, to my colleague's point, is salt of the earth. This guy's coming in, he just wants to make a living. Someone's paid him to take this stuff out of this building. Someone's paid him to come in, and they're saying, yeah, you can have whatever you can take out that's scrappable, you can have. There's an agreement between him and the person who owned that property. That agreement means he's not a criminal. He has a reason to have it. It only rises to the level of criminal when we stop the person who my colleague identifies as a scrapper, so I'll use the same language. It only rises to the level of criminal when we stop that scrapper who has a truck full of this stuff, and we say to the scrapper, where'd you get this? And the scrapper says, oh, I was doing some remodel work. Well, tell me where you were doing the remodel work. Who were you working for? Who owned the property where you took this from? Whose property was this before you came into possession of it? It's not illegal to have this property in your possession. It's not. It's only illegal to have this property in your possession if the person who owned it didn't give you permission to have it. So again, I think there's a misunderstanding about what this actually does. And to Councilman Biaggiatini's point, we didn't see with catalytic converters this huge rush to stop people who were trading legally into catalytic converters. I don't think you're going to see a huge rush to go after scrappers who are being asked by property owners to come in and do remodel work. What we're going to see is people who have this in their possession, and I apologize to my colleague, and I regret that it's true for him, this does add a level of responsibility. If I'm a scrapper and somebody's giving me permission to take wire, it does add a level of responsibility that when I'm asked where did it come from, I have to have a legitimate answer.
Councilman Leonard has to respond.
Just really quickly, as it's written in section 9, it's required to present proof. And I am telling you right now, the scrappers I have known that I sold to at auction, that I, you know, my dearly departed uncle, they would say to the officer, I don't know, dude told me I could take it. And that is just the truth, and we are gonna have people that are gonna become justice involved. If that is in the view of the council, an unfortunate collateral damage, but what we need to do to address the problem, which is a very serious problem, then that's how the votes are gonna go. I'm just saying this is a problem.
Councilwoman Shanika Pierce-Wright, please.
Thank you. So I'm thankful that Councilman Leonard was able to say what I was saying. My concern is that the definition is too broad. People have been asked to clean out homes and backyards and places where there's a lot of wire and exposed wire or whatever happens. The definition is too broad. If John Q. Public was going to a place to recycle, and their reasoning was that Tony gave me this stuff, and they don't have a written receipt for it, then they could be subjected, based on this definition, to being charged with a crime or evidence to sell. If they can't prove it with a receipt, they don't have the evidence that they weren't selling it. And as the reference to Cadillac converters, they're very specific. If you're riding around with 7 of those, that's obvious. Wiring is more generalized. Cadillac converters, I know what they look like. I've watched them be fixed and installed or whatever. That's a totally different thing. But I do see the connection in making this regulated so that people don't do this. I want to be clear that my advocacy for people is not me condoning criminality. And I refuse, every time I say something about advocating for people here, it's always put in this mention like, I'm not committing crimes, I'm not breaking the law, and I'm not condoning people to do it. But I still support people's human rights and people not being racially profiled because they're poor and they have a raggedy truck with wire in it. If they don't have a receipt, then that could happen and they could be charged, and it is hell getting out of jail with no money. So I appreciate the efforts, as I said before. I don't speak with a double tongue. I think this is a great effort. I'm asking for a better definition so that people that I care about, even if some of you think everybody's criminals, that they don't get caught up into this and in jail unnecessarily when the only thing they had is, Ken told me I can clean out this house and I'm bringing you this wire. That's what I'm asking for. It's different. This wire is different from catalytic converters. Can we come together on an agreed upon definition that is as inclusive as possible so that it doesn't put people in that situation? So that was it. Thank you.
There's not a response different than the one I gave before, the wire, the type of wire is the type of wire, there's no way to define it differently.
Councilman Page.
And I'm not gonna, if I may finish, I don't wanna take the bait on the implication that somehow some of us are heartless and don't care. I think Councilman Piagentini made the point earlier, and I appreciate his making the point. His point was in regard to the recyclers, but I think it's equally applicable to people who are doing a fair day's wage, doing the best they can just to get by. There are a lot of people who we are grateful for who are recycling materials that would otherwise end up in landfills. This is actually, the recycling industry is a great industry. It actually does us a great favor. It's great for the environment. I think people who are legitimately selling these products are doing us a great favor. But the same as is true for the recycling industry, it's equally true for you and I. There are people who don't behave the way they're supposed to behave, and because that's true, we have to put regulations in place that inconvenience the rest of us. If I could do this any other way, I would. I don't like the idea that we're inconveniencing recyclers. I absolutely don't like the idea that we're inconveniencing scrappers. I don't like the idea that we're inconveniencing the reconstruction industry. it is unfortunate, and there are, I think that 80-20 principle here probably applies. I would argue that more than 80% of the people who are selling scrap metal are selling it quite legally. This isn't going after people who are, doing things the right way. I regret that the largest percentage of the population is now going to be inconvenienced because a very small portion of our community is involved in the kinds of crime that are exceedingly expensive to recover from and create health, safety issues. So I think it's an unfair characterization to suggest that those of us who are involved in this are doing it because we don't care about people. It's more, especially from my perspective, I'll tell you, I am keenly aware that I am adding regulations and inconvenience to people who absolutely don't deserve it. But we've got a problem that a very small percentage of the population is created for us, and the only way to do it is to identify that small population. That's what this does. It doesn't say you can't scrap anymore, it just says if you're gonna do this, then we have to know that you're doing it legally. That's what it says. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Piagentini, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A few things. First of all, there was a claim made that you need proof in the form of a receipt. Nowhere in here does it say that. Proof by itself is calling who you, if another person says, I allow them to take this, that by itself is admissible proof. So this idea that you can't call up, Joe, who said that I could take that wire, and that's proof enough, is not true. That's proof by itself, by definition. So this idea that you need to roll around a receipt is not true. You simply, if you called somebody, and they were able to answer the question, that would be it. As far as impounding the cars, we did this. I amended our graffiti ordinance several years ago to also allow that. And I think there was just a ton of confusion on how this works. There is not, for example, a bunch of LMPD officers, opposed to officers rolling around trying to catch people in the act of graffiti and then impounding their cars at the same time. What is happening is we get them under surveillance. We catch them in the act on the videographic evidence. We go to their house and arrest them, usually finding all of the paraphernalia they've been using, and we see the car that we have on video that they used to get back and forth to the crime, and then we impound the vehicle. Again, this idea that LMPD is driving down the highway and sees some copper in the truck and just pulls them over randomly. I mean, I can't get LMPD to pull over people for speeding right now when they're doing 95 down the highway because we don't have enough traffic officers. That is not going to be happening. It hasn't happened. We do this similarly with graffiti, with many other crimes, and they are not doing it. I find it fascinating, so just how this will be done mechanically and how LMPD works is not being represented accurately on how this will be enforced. This will almost certainly be enforced via surveillance techniques and evidence that exists, that then they can go and arrest that person and then execute the law. I find it fascinating that I have colleagues who lament profiling, right, and lament that other colleagues of mine may be doing something that targets certain people and then accuses LMPD of doing the exact thing that they're saying other people can't do, right? This idea that LMPD is being blanketly accused with no evidence whatsoever of using this law or any false law like it. Mr. Chair, can we get silence in the gallery, please?
Yeah, we will have silence in the gallery. We'll have it removed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So that by itself, again, if that's what we're going to do, and we are going to take, again, a few bad actors and things that have happened in the past at LMPD and accuse them blanketly of violating the law, then you should be accepting of that for any other accusation of any other demographic in the city, which I would also reject. If somebody breaks the law, that doesn't mean that everybody else in that industry also breaks the law. or it should be accused of breaking it. So, and then finally, I'll say, look, and as Councilman Kramer said, there's massive cost to this. I mean, the only thing I would probably like to see amended is to add full restitutional liability to the people who are doing this. What we have not done, because I don't think legally we have the ability to do it. I would love to have a civil fine against those people for the full cost of the criminality that they're executing. I believe by statute we're limited about how much money we can fine somebody, so we cannot do that. But, I mean, that's the only thing I would like to see added. But again, I know that there are concerns, but we have done laws like this before, and we have not seen the concerns in enforcing it that law enforcement is being used. So we are not seeing the evidence. I think it's a reasonable thing to move forward. And I just wanted to clarify how we enforce these other laws in the past. It is not randomly pulling over people who have things in their car. It is more like through investigations that they can use this law to enforce it when they have to. I hope that helps clarify how this is going to be done. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilwoman Jenny Malloy Woolridge, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to also say that I do agree with this proposal. There was a comment made a few times about receipts, and as Councilman Biaggiantini stated, there is a comment in this about receipts, but it is not about the scrappers or those leaving receipts. It is about the secondary, let me get to it, the secondary metal recyclers to give receipts to those that are selling it. So it's a plain written or printed receipt, and that is where it is documented here. I do agree that we have scrappers that are out here and doing a good job for us and continue to do that work. Appreciate that that's being done. I think what's being proposed here is that, as has been stated, that you just need to know where that's coming from, be able to state where it's coming from. So again, give the name or the house or the work you're doing versus I just picked it up off the street. So again, thank you for the work you put forward in this, Councilman Kramer.
But we're gonna have, here's how it's gonna be. Councilwoman Shamika Parrish Wright would like to ask a question, but she has a bill to be heard. I'm gonna give you the option. You can ask your next question and we adjourn, or we'll call a question and we'll go to the next option, next item.
Asking the question takes 1 minute.
Asking,
I need a response.
you have had plenty of time, and he may want a response. I'm calling the question if you want to give up your time.
I don't want to waste the people's time that came, so. But I can address, Councilman Kramer later on my question about the threshold. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I introduced this amendment.
Oh, motion.
I'm not on the committee, so I can't make a motion. Thank you, Councilman.
Item has been moved and passed. This is a voice vote for the amendment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Nay? Then it passes. Now we're gonna take a vote on the ordinance. It's a roll call. Vote is open.
Committee Member Shankland? Your sign, you have eight yes and 1 present.
Thank you, colleague.
The ordinance passes. Clerk, please read item number 4 in the record, please.
A resolution urging Louisville Metro government to formally acknowledge the documented harms of the Louisville Metro Police Department and urge the Louisville Metro Police Department to build trust in the community. Read in full.
Can I get a motion?
Motion.
Second.
The item has been properly moved by the committee members. Councilman Parrish Wright is the sponsor of the resolution. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This resolution, is something that I brought back again this year. It has had major amendments that have been brought by the community. This is not Shamika's words. These are words that have been documented by the community. by the DOJ's report on policing and by the district police report that was commissioned in the Truth and Transformation process out of U of L. And the community wants a voice in this process as it goes on. These things are dated back at least 2020, before 2020. And we have worked together for the last few years to come up with something that we can have formally acknowledged as council. And I want to be clear about that. None of this is anti-LMPD, as it seems like anything is taken to that level. This is not anti-Mayor Greenberg or Chief Humphreys. This does not work against what they put together as their own version of the Louisville consent decree. This is non-binding resolution. I want to be clear about that. It's not binding. It doesn't make you do anything. It doesn't subject you to a bunch of lawsuits. There's no money that it costs. It's the community voice that did not get captured in everything else that has happened. Some voices did, some voices didn't. This is an opportunity for us as a council to be bold, to say that we recognize that there's been documented harms, and we want to recognize that we're putting that formally out here so that there's recognition, so we can pivot towards healing and going to a new direction. It is my understanding that people are working on different parts of whatever the mayor has put together, and I'm not saying that in a disrespectful way, but the mayor is the manager of our city, of the legislation and the budget that we control and we pass. It is his job to do his part and take action. He is doing that. There is no doubt. And I have said from the beginning, if they want to list all the things that they've done in the process since 2020, in the reforms, that could be added to this. But this resolution is not about Mayor Greenberg or Chief Humphreys. It's about recognizing what happened and making sure that we pivot forward. This resolution is one step. The next part of that is other pieces that other people are working on. I'm not working on that. I'm working on this with the community as a way to honor their voices, honor the trauma, honor the many things that too many people in this community has experienced, including myself, because I was wrongfully arrested and I was not committing a crime. And too many other people, we're paying lawsuits. We continue to deal with this in every other area. And I don't understand why a resolution that's went through the same processes as everybody else's resolutions, county attorney, they all have said this is legal, it's non-binding, but it gives the people a voice. I've seen resolutions about people in neighborhoods, about somebody's dog, about all kinds of things. This is a way to recognize the people's voices in the process of this. This does not take away from Mayor Greenberg. This does not take away from the actions of Chief Humphreys and the things that they're working on, or anything in that. This does not interrupt the process of whatever they're doing. This is what the people have asked for, and I'm asking for your support. I know that we want to be done at 5:30. Some of you don't even want to have to vote on this, but it is something that I have committed to with the community, and I want to see it through because they have asked me to. I am not going to be insulted and go back and forth. I jump through hoops. Piagentini has asked me for an ethics opinion. I got that. Other council members have asked me for different pieces. The community has addressed all of that. In this amended resolution that I've sent out to you, it is just those words. We've taken out anything around money, around spending. It's really just about what is left that we can address. That is what I want you to consider as you're voting. Some of you have said the language. This is not my language. It is the language from a DOJ investigation and report that everybody accepted. It's on a police website.
Yep.
We're gonna spend all this money on this. That's not my words. It's not, the community has said, Shamika, can we get this past the go? Can we see a formal recognition of what happened? We all talk about the Explorer program. We talk about so many other issues that have happened over the years. And some of you have done meaningful work. Councilman Piagentini said to me yesterday, I brought some things up. I know some of you have worked on a No More Knocks. That was unanimous. That is different, and this doesn't take away from that. And I don't understand why people are irritated by this part of the process when it comes from our constituents. Constituents from every one of your districts, all of our 26 districts support this. This is not personal. I've not made no deals or anything. So if you don't have anything that is specific to the amendment that the people put together, I have no other comments to convince you because some of you have already made up your mind. I'm asking you to consider the people in this audience, the people that this is our turn in history to do what's right by a community that is asking us to recognize those documented harms. If you can't do that, that's on you. I'm not trying to make you look bad, and I'm not trying to say you all don't care. But I have not heard anything that stops this legislation as a resolution that is non-binding. None of your issues, and I've talked to many of you, has anything to do with that. And it does not separate, it does not stop what the mayor is doing, and that's separate. This is about recognizing that as a council. The mayor has a role. We have two bodies that have the same amount of power. We are the legislative body, and we decide the budget, and we decide the ordinances and the resolutions. The mayor and his team acts them out. He's doing this part. Where is our part? And that's what I'm adding to with this resolution. That is it. And I want to be out of here, and just be honest with yourself. It's not about Shamika. I don't need this win. I'm not running for mayor off of this. I don't understand all of this mess. I'm doing this because the people have asked me again and again, can we get recognized? Can you recognize what has happened? Can we have that documented? That is all this is. Thank you.
Councilwoman Jenny Mulberry Woolridge, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councilman Wright, for putting this together and making the changes that I know that many have brought forward. I think my questions, I hear that what has happened isn't being recognized or being heard, and I think from where I stand and people I've talked to, where that comes into play is, first, it has been heard because the community commitment had been made, and that's a public acknowledgement that yes, there were issues and reforms that were being needed, and reforms that have been made. So, and that's been very public, that has been put out there, not only in document, but in, on the news, and the mayor's come out and board and said what she was come out and said. So I think that's been very public that it's come out, and acknowledgement that yes, again, reform was needed, reform has happened, and reform will continue to happen. And so, and the tracking of how that's gonna happen is laid out in there, including of, the council being included in that. So, I'm by no means saying that there wasn't issues, and there aren't issues, right? I think where I see some of this is it's referencing here that the recommendations of the United States Department of Justice, and it's referenced a few times in here, but I know that was dismissed, right? That yes, there were some things that were written in there, but ultimately their recommendations were dismissed. So I think that's where part of my issues are here. Again, not saying, so please don't take it, whether you're watching online or here in public or not, that I don't think that there were things that were needed. Just a few other things in here that I had. I guess personally, I'm looking at it like the number 5 here, it's LMP officers, respect the First Amendment rights of all persons, including process, but there's nothing that states, what does that process mean? Is it a civil process? Is it a non-civil process? Does that mean we're okay to block streets again? Does that mean we're okay to violate the officer's First Amendment rights? Again, just, I think some of this language, right? And that's, I tried to connect a little bit yesterday when I able to, but I think that's where some of it comes into play. Again, by no means do we want to violate anyone's First Amendment rights, but I know my husband was down there as an officer, and his rights are violated by the fact of having things thrown at him, pee thrown at him, spit on, biohazards. That when he came home, he had to take showers in the basement to not bring stuff upstairs. So that put my rights in jeopardy, my health in jeopardy. So, again, I think that we can have conversations on this, but this is where my ace is on it. Again, the fact that I do think we've had some public acknowledgement, and I think that we do need to continue to move together as a force towards these reforms.
Councilman Piagentini, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, let me just start by saying, we have disagreements on this council, it's natural. We do it in a respectful way. I can literally hear whisperings from people in the gallery using profanities against my colleague. and I would ask everybody to refrain from doing that.
Nobody said it. Nobody was
And
back here
then, Mr.
cussing.
Sheriff, we could have one, please.
We have to have quiet in here, I'm gonna have you removed.
I'll remove myself. Tell them the
Have her
truth.
removed, please.
Nobody's back here cussing. So
And
tell
you
them the truth.
know it.
And I'll remove myself.
That's so crazy.
Because we don't listen to nobody lying to her discussing about her
Can we
husband.
get more security in here?
He's behind me and I'm leaving.
You still running it?
I'm gonna keep running because I pay taxes. How about that?
You continue.
Thank you, Mr. Sheriff. I do understand that resolutions are non-binding, but I wouldn't, but the idea that resolutions don't spend money is not 100% accurate. I'll give you an example. The green energy or clean energy resolution, which I voted against, that resolution has created policies and budgetary impacts for millions and millions of dollars. So I know what you're saying, that's not your intention. I agree that's not your intention. I'm just saying that that even current mayors have taken resolutions and put them and expended huge dollars behind them. I appreciate that the people want a voice. We be clear, resolutions are the voice of those that vote on it in the council, who represent the whole community, okay? And again, I think there's some disagreement here, and that's what it is, it's just disagreement. I don't necessarily, for example, agree that the people have not been heard. We wouldn't be doing any reforms if the people haven't been heard. And the people clearly have, because we're halfway through most of the reforms that have been proposed. Just to point out I do want to start with areas of green. First of all, I think the new version is much better, is very different, and I appreciate my colleague doing that. I also want to point out one portion of this which is wholly accurate, and I think there's been a lot of confusion. And my goal here is to eliminate confusion about the process. And your section 2 is 100% right. That the Louisville Metro Council provides local oversight of any executive branch function. We have had investigations into LMPD, into TARC, into Louisville Metro Animal Services. I can keep going on. And this will be another one of those things that, particularly government accountability, which has subpoena power, should have oversight over. But the confusion, I think, what my colleague was getting at partially is, for example, one of the whereas clauses. December 12, 2024, and you date it, so I think that helps clarify. The Justice Department announced an agreement to resolve their findings that Louisville Metro and LMP engaged in pattern or practice violation of the Constitution and federal law. Except, and here's where the confusion lies, the current Department of Justice has not moved forward with those findings. And this was never adjudicated in court. That, as a matter of fact, DOJ pulled back on their filing in court related to proving whether or not that was true. That is an allegation that was made, not that it was ever adjudicated and proven. With that said, you still need to execute reforms. And again, I think you outlined some of the things that lay out a lot of the headlines on reforms, but I do think you mentioned this is one of many steps. If we're going to do something as a council, what I would ask is that we do one thing and move forward, right? We have a process, so we don't pass a thing, we have a process of oversight that exists regardless of anything we pass. But if we're gonna pass something, what I don't want to have happen is, we pass something here, then another council member wants to pass something different, then we're having another conversation about another aspect of it. We need to deliberate on this and make a decision on how we're moving forward, and then move forward in that manner. And as it is currently, I would not vote on this version of that, because I know there are other council members that want to do other things. So I think that needs to be vetted out, and then we vote. But I'm also not interested in delaying this. I'm glad to vote whenever you're ready to vote, frankly. So I also agree with you. I do not want to put you in a position where it's getting dragged out forever. That's unfair too. So we should vote on this in the near future. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councilman J.P. Leonard, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm a co-sponsor of this. Obviously, I support its passage. When we talk about the harms that historically, these are statements of fact, Dr. Kate Fossil's report is, these are statements of fact. These are research, these are things that happen. These are historic harms going back before our lifetimes. These are problems that we've had in the city of Louisville in unequal justice in our city. When we talk about the agreement that the city and LMPD entered into, the dismissal was not against the findings of the DOJ from the previous Department of Justice. That dismissal was entirely about the process and the oversight that we were going to have from the court. And that's what the city did not object to the dismissal. Otherwise, the city had accepted the findings. And that is a statement of fact. That is what the city did. And LMPD has agreed to reforms. I would like to also point out that whereas clauses under Robert's rules, they're window dressing. They don't exist. All whereas clauses exist in terms of adornment. They are not actionable. Even in a resolution or an ordinance, whereas clauses don't enter into whatever you vote on. But fundamentally, we have not, as our body, our branch of government, acknowledged the harms. People can't move on. People can't move on for healing. People can't move on for forgiveness without acknowledgement of harm. This is just part of being human. I think that we need to acknowledge harms, and then we can move on this resolution. And yes, I do think additionally, we do need actionable ordinance addressing what our role is and government accountability's role with the independent monitor. But any money that's going to be spent as a result of this resolution is already in motion with the mayor's office, has already been appropriated by this body for that purpose. So I'm not concerned about any kind of financial repercussions of passage. What I am concerned about is whether or not we're doing our job in terms of acknowledging those harms. And then, yes, I do believe we should pass an ordinance, although I have heard from members who want a tighter process and have less motion from this body on the question, that the resolution and an ordinance don't meet, and that these are separate concerns. So I hope that is not a holdup, because I have received that feedback from members across the body. But I do urge, now that we move this to council and it is voted upon, and that people can see how people feel about this particular resolution. Thank you.
Before I call on the next one, I just wanted to say, 4 words: Civilian Review and Accountability Board. It's called CRAB. We pay the Office of Internal General a lot of money to investigate our officers. We're already doing it. Councilman Piagentini, please.
No, I think. And I could have withdrawn it.
Councilwoman Perkins.
I'm gonna say, my colleague has worked tremendously hard on this. She's listened to the people, and that's what we were hoping to do. So I will be in support of this.
Councilwoman Shanika Parrish-Wright, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you all. I know that this is not the easiest thing to talk about. We must remember that these issues didn't start with us, and it's just our turn to do our part along this process. And we are a body that you can continue to file. We don't have a short legislative session or a long. All of our our legislative sessions are long. So things will be brought up. I can't control what other council people will do. All I can do is be open and inclusive. I want to say though, I know you brought up the financial aspect. This isn't, we've taken anything about money out of there. This doesn't do that. As Councilman Leninger said, that process, we gave money in part of the budget for the independent monitor last year. So that's moving. This is separate, you all. It's a resolution. The ordinances to help codify the process and all that, those are going to be ordinances that other people are working on. This doesn't take away from that. This doesn't do anything but recognize the people's voice, which we're here to represent. I wanted people to see the thought. I appreciate the debate. I do want you to vote on this, but I also want you to take one last consideration. None of you have asked anything that really would change this resolution. You don't like what the language says, but the language is from a report that was accepted by our city government that we have put money to the findings and the different reforms. That's already been accepted. This is our body's turn to recognize that in that way. Yes, you're right, Councilwoman Woolridge. The mayor has said and done things, and the chief has said and done things. This is different. They are the part of the administration that has to apply what we do. What have we said and done, and where can we find it? And that is what this resolution is about. So thank you for the opportunity to share, and thank you, Mr. Chair, for giving us the opportunity to see this further.
I'll need to make a motion.
Oh, offer amendment? Oh, I thought it, okay. I wanna, make a motion to adopt the amendment that has been offered, that was presented by the People's Consent Decree Coalition.
Second.
Thank you.
Motion been properly moved, so we will vote, voice on the amendment. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those in favor, and against, nay? The ayes have it. Now we're for the resolution, and we're gonna make that a.
And we just got a question.
Already voted. Yeah, we're gonna do that via, voice. Roll call. We're gonna do that via roll call. Would you open up the roll, please?
Voting's open. Committee member Shannon. Chair Simon, you have 4 yes and 5 no votes.
Resolution failed. So there's the whole business. There's no other further business. This meeting is adjourned. We will be back next Wednesday, June 18th.
If you do nothing else.
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 If you do nothing else.